What'd you think of the Bears draft?
Well, the only way I can judge any draft is based on my evaluation of the players. I don't really get caught up in where guys should or shouldn't get drafted or if they reached, because I never, who knows about that stuff. So I really liked the players they drafted based on my tape study.
Who in particular did you like?
Darnell Wright, Tyrique Stevenson. I think Zach Pickens is really interesting. I think Gervon Dexter has some issues that need to be cleaned up, but his really good plays are really, really good. So I think that's a good amount. I like Tyler Scott as well.
All right, well, so that's a great place to start. I mean, may as well start then with the first-round pick, Darnell Wright. Do you consider him a plug-and-play right tackle? That's probably the biggest hole on their offensive line.
Yeah, I do. He was one of my favorite offensive linemen in this draft. He may have been the physically strongest offensive lineman in this draft. You just had to watch the game against Alabama when he stoned Will Anderson snap after snap after snap. Anderson, who's a speed to power rusher, not a bender, kept trying to work through Darnell Wright's chest, and Darnell Wright just stoned him on every single snap. But I really liked Darnell Wright's tape. I thought for the entire season he was very, very good.
Greg, we've spent a lot of time talking about the three technique, and Zach Pickens seems more prototypical for the three technique, but they've been talking about both these guys, Gervon Dexter, as you mentioned, and Pickens being rotational guys in the middle. Could you see both of them being both the nose tackle and the three tech?
I would say Pickens is probably more along those lines because he's 290. He'd probably be more of a pure three. Pickens is one of those guys that showed flashes of being a one-gap penetrator. He's got that kind of quickness. He certainly has the athletic and physical traits to do that. Dexter's a little different. Dexter's a bigger man. Dexter has a lot of talent, but the problem with Dexter is he has a glaring tendency to be late off the ball, and that's going to need to be cleaned up. But when you watch his really good plays, you come away thinking, God, this guy looks like Chris Jones, but he just doesn't play like that often enough. And as I said, if he continues to be late off the ball, you can't win like that in the NFL, but they'll work with him on that and hopefully, get him on track. But, Dexter's a guy with a lot of talent.
Ryan Poles spoke to the exact thing you just brought up about Dexter and him not looking like he got off the ball often, said that he played too much, basically, that the percentage of snaps was just so high that he was often out there gassed. They believe there's more in the tank if they lighten the load. Does that make any sense?
Sure. I remember that's one thing I learned from a GM a number of years ago about defensive tackles, that in college football you tend to play more snaps because there are more snaps, because most teams don't huddle and there's just more snaps. So, yeah, that's very true. A lot of times guys play more snaps in college football than they will in the NFL. I couldn't speak to whether it was a function of him being gassed or not, but it was clear on tape that he was often laid off the ball, and, that's obviously a problem.
Greg Cosell from NFL Films and NFL Matchup is our guest. Matt Eberflus says the three techniques, the whole key to the whole defense. Can you explain in simple terms to our audience why?
Well, if you're a four-man defensive front, which he is, there's a lot of five-man fronts in the league right now. But if you're a four-man defensive front, you're playing essentially what is an even front and a one-gap front, meaning that you're not covering usually the offensive center, and that your interior defensive tackles are playing in gaps. So you have what is a one technique, who's usually he's in a gap between the center and the guard, and then you have a three technique who's in a gap just off the guard but between the guard and the tackle, and they're penetrating positions. They're not stand up and wait and see where the ball goes. They're penetrating positions, and the three technique is viewed as a critical piece.
Well, the way they're talking about it now, since they don't have any edge rushers, is that the middle of the line is going to dent the pocket or bump the pocket. I had not heard either of those before, but that will shorten the length that the edge rushers have to go to. Buying it?
Well, the idea is that if you can pressure up the middle, that you in a sense force the quarterback. He can't step up and throw. And now ideally your edge rushers don't have as much distance to go. So that's the plan. We'll see if that works out. But clearly they address the interior with Pickens and Dexter.
cornerback a premium position on any defense. You said you liked Stevenson.
Loved him.
Okay, loved him. What did you love when you popped in the film?
He was one of my favorite corners to watch because this guy plays press man, and he plays with a swagger. He plays with an attitude. He's big. He's physical. I just loved watching this guy play. I mean, he was the most physical press man corner that I saw on tape, and I saw a lot of corners. He's most comfortable playing that way. He's got explosive athletic traits. He plays with a competitive swagger, as I said. There's a mental arrogance with which he plays. He's one of those guys that I would imagine that defensive back coaches would love to have in their room because he's an attitude guy.
That's awesome and exciting as we talk with Greg Cosell about the Bears draft. All right, you mentioned the wide receiver, the very, very fast Tyler Scott. What did you like about him?
Yeah, I thought Tyler Scott, one thing that you saw on the tape, and he played much faster than his 40 time at the Combine. He was a speed guy. It showed up on tape. He consistently ran by corners. He had really good ball tracking skills and late hands. You can use him in today's NFL. The tunnel bubble screen game, jet sweeps, all those things that are now part of the league. And I thought that he did a little more than that in terms of route running. So I really liked him.
Did you see anything on the running back from Texas that they drafted? Because the Bears said that he might be a pillar of the organization, Greg, a fourth-round running back.
Well, he's supposed to be an unbelievably great kid. I don't get to interview these kids or talk to them, but I like Rashawn Johnson. I think that he's a physical, aggressive, determined downhill runner, but it's tempered with enough patience and vision and nuance to give him a little bit of a feel of a complete runner. He runs to his size. I mean, he's 220 pounds. He runs to his size. He's physical. He can sustain. Don't forget that, he didn't have a ton of carries because of Bijan Robinson, so he's not worn out, but there's a competitive toughness to him. There's an attitude to him. You like your backs, someone in your backfield to be an attitude runner, to be physical and aggressive and determined, and he's that kind of back.
We're talking to Greg Cosell here, Parkins and Spiegel on The Score. All right, so big picture, when you factor in their offseason as a whole, TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds surprised us because of the investment in the linebacker position. Do you see, as you start to put the pieces of this puzzle together, it's only our second year here with Ryan Poles, do you see the type of team that he's building?
Well, I think defensively, I think it's an Eberflus team because don't forget where he came from. He had Leonard, he had Okereke. Linebackers were important to him. I know a lot of people don't view stacked backers as important as they once were, but it's clearly that way for the head coach. So therefore, they made an investment there. And by the way, and I know he got hurt. I think he got hurt against the Eagles, but I thought Jack Sanborn played extremely well before he got hurt. Once they traded Roquan Smith, seemed like he was getting more tackles per game than Smith was.
Mm-hmm.
But so, I mean, they're going to look in their base 4-3 as Edwards, Edmonds, and Sanborn, I'm sure. We'll see what they do in their sub. Normally he's a nickel guy, not a dime guy. I think the defense has some really interesting pieces now. I really like Jaquan Brisker. I think he's going to be a really good player. Kyler Gordon, I thought, had a good rookie year. We'll see if Tyrique Stevenson can step in and start at outside corner. I think they'd like that to be the case based on, to match up with Jalen Johnson. So I think defensively the pieces are starting to come into place. We all know it's going to fall on Justin Fields and his further development as far as the offense.
How big is the ask for Justin Fields? Now they've got him the number one wide receiver in DJ Moore. They got him a right tackle he can feel good about. They're going to chip and do some max protection to buy him some time. This is the year. Bears have to have clarity by the end. How big is the ask for him to take that step? How hard is it to do?
Well, I mean, it's always hard. It's the quarterback position. It's maybe the single most difficult position in sports. But, I think you have to take a step forward in terms of his ability to see the field, play from the pocket, and make throws that don't seem important but are. In other words, when it's 3rd and 7, you have to hit 9-yard throws. Those are not throws that are going to appear on any highlight show, but those are the throws you have to make. You can't just live on his ability to run, because what will happen is he'll get hurt more, and or if he's not hurt where he misses games, there's just attrition. Your body doesn't handle that real well. So it's at some point this year, you're going to have to see further development in terms of seeing the field, getting the ball out of his hands within the timing and rhythm of the pass game. You're going to have to see those kinds of continued improvement.
Been selling a lot of Bears fans on DJ Moore. They're obviously excited, but you watch the film of everybody. Where does he rank among NFL wide receivers?
Oh, I like DJ Moore. I loved him coming out of Maryland. I think he's a really good receiver. You can get caught up in, is he a number one? However you want to talk about it, but he can be your boundary X, which is a critical position in today's NFL, the single receiver to the short side of the field. That's what you want. You'd like to have guys like Mooney and Tyler Scott be movement guys, get them free releases so they can burst off the line of scrimmage and get into more vertical type routes and stretch defenses to create more space inside. Even Claypool can run a little bit. It's all of a sudden they've got the makings of a somewhat multi-dimensional receiving core. There are certainly questions, but it has that feel to it.
We're hoping that for the first time in a long time, the Bears have a top half of the NFL offense. It'd be a nice change of pace around here, Greg.
Well, we'll see. I mean, as you guys clearly know, much depends on Justin Fields. And, then it all depends on the approach they take with him and what they ask him to do. Sometimes you can get too caught up in the running part, and obviously he'll make phenomenal plays running. That will happen. You don't want to take that away, but that can't be everything.
Greg, who are one or two of your favorite players in this draft that landed in a really good spot that you're looking forward to watching them in the NFL?
Oh God, that's so hard for me, guys. I've watched 225 guys, and trying to think where guys landed.
Yeah.
I can't even. I mean, I love, and it's in your division, but I loved Jack Campbell coming out of Iowa, and I know the Lions took him, I think at 17 or 18, and I didn't view that as a stretch at all. The guy's a really good player. You know what you're going to get on every snap. You're in Big Ten country, so you know what kind of player he is and how good he's been at Iowa. So that I really thought was interesting. Just like when they drafted Jahmyr Gibbs, I've got this belief, believe it or not, that having explosive players on offense is a good thing, and it's up to the coaching staff to figure out how to use them. Not, it doesn't matter what's next to his name, WR, RB. You want explosive players on the field in your offense.